Good afternoon, Mark. Thank you for joining me. It's good to chat with you again. Although I think we could probably chat for hours generally anyway. So thank you for taking the time out to discuss your career with me, and to sort of discuss it with everybody, to inspire other people to do perhaps what you've done or to engage with you, because it's your career story and background is really rather interesting. So everybody, this is Mark Sears, and he is a rewilding consultant. That's the best word. Is it consultant, Mark? Well, over to you anyway. You describe yourself and what you do and what actually rewilding actually means.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, firstly. And I think so. Yeah, I mean, I work, I guess, as a speaker and a coach and a trainer. And I do some consultancy, and what I'm really interested in is helping people step into their wild potential. And what that means is, and I'm particularly interested in working with entrepreneurs and kind of people that want to create change, and it's about how our wild potential can support us to kind of step into a bigger sense of ourselves or our potentiality, what we can achieve in our lives and in our work. And I guess partly that reflects my own career path, but also this sense that I've had over the last few years that there's sort of that reconnecting to my own nature, my own wildness, and that actually if we can do that, we can start to tap into something that goes beyond just our own sort of body, if you like, and actually realize that we're part of a 3.8 billion year old innovation lab. Really, it's been trial and error for 3.8 billion years, and it comes up with human beings only 240,000 years ago. And actually we're the kind of culmination, us, it's a miracle that we're here. So I help people see that miracle and just kind of step into a longer sense of time, and help them apply that into their work and the change they want to create.
Yeah, because actually we don't, do we? We spend so much time caught up with this sort of busyness of being and everything that we're told we should be or ought to be. But actually when you step back and you spend time with the self and recenter yourself, it's really so good for the soul. Like we were saying earlier, I mean, I spent last week on a foraging, in South Wales, and I spent part of the day on a foraging course. And just being out there and being with nature is wonderful, because you don't need anything. But I mean, that's taking it obviously to an extreme. But in terms of when you're talking about rewilding and connecting with that wild side, because I mean, we've all got that inner spirit, haven't we, that fires us up. And I think so many people over the years, there's this education that they've dampened it down. They've not allowed that real sense of themselves, their authentic true self, to come out, because like I was saying, people feel they ought to be this and they should be this because this is what they've been dictated to. But where do you come in? What do you do to help them tap into that? How do you go about all of that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the first thing to say is just the root of the word wild is really interesting, because actually it's etymologically linked with the word will. So to be wild is to be willful. So it's to kind of to step into that sense of self, that sense of conviction, to really sort of know who you are and what you are. So that's what I help people do. And I think there's also that thing is, as soon as you start talking about nature, it starts to become this tree huggery kind of woo-woo-y type thing. And I really reject all of that. I think, people want to hug trees. I'm totally in for that. But it's more about how do you kind of apply nature's principles and apply it to kind of modern life, modern business. And that's the work that I do. And it's kind of like, how do you use this kind of 3.8 billion year old innovation lab and help us with our purpose? Because we all need, whether individuals or organizations, we're all striving, we're seeking for purpose. How does it support our well-being? Kind of supports around resilience. How does it help us collaborate better? How does it help us be much more creative? And how does it build cultures? All those things we can get by using kind of looking into the way that nature builds things. So that's kind of what I do. I guess to help, I sort of take people through a process that kind of goes, well, how would nature design this? How would nature deal with this? Trees only need to be hugged if we want to as part of that. But really it's about applying principles and applying that into our work,
Yeah. It's quite metaphorical then, the word, it is as it is, but it's also metaphorical, that word wild, isn't it? And I like that, as you've said, it is a will, it is willful. And actually, for the record, I do hug trees. So call me woo-woo or whatever, but I do love to hug a tree.
I think there's lots of people out there that go, I'm not going to hug a tree. And for me, hugging trees is a stealth thing, right? So I kind of, if I can get people hugging trees, I don't usually lead with that. It's kind of like, that's an after effect of working with me.
Yes, but I can see how that works. Because I mean, obviously within, so this is within my sort of other hat, if you like, running a recruitment business and in recruiting candidates for clients and looking at the culture and what the sort of the avatar is, it's very important. And you see where companies get it wrong as well. People don't take that time to hire the right person. They don't create the right culture, the right environment. But when you do take that time to review that and you look at it, you can actually find people within your own business that have got the key skills that you may need for another role, but they've actually come into it from a different angle, into the business, that is, from a different angle. But maybe they're sitting in accounts, but actually they're really, really good at communications. And I think if you can identify that with people that are already within there, which I'm assuming through the work that you actually do, that's helping organisations look at that and look at the calibre and the quality and the uniqueness of their staff that they've got and what fires those staff up. And actually you can redeploy people that know the business and therefore create a different culture, one which is more sort of passionate, the environment's right, the people are then sort of vibing in the right way, which can then increase productivity.
Totally, exactly that. And so I talk a lot about the idea of, because again, always comes back to the etymology of words, kind of the root of words.
That's a long word, Mark, and I didn't try to repeat it.
The root of words, and genius is another one. So we always talk about genius as an individual thing. So it's like, is Tom in accounts, good at what he does, and actually the word genius, the where it comes from, it was never used. It's a Latin word, and it was never used by itself. It was always used with a second word after it, which was loci. So genius loci, which basically means genius of a place. And the Irish still have a saying for genius of a place. And it's basically, if you go to a place, a beach or somewhere, and you go to it at a particular time when the sun hits a particular rock, a particular moment in time, that is that moment, that is that genius. So it's not just one element, it's multiple elements coming together. So I love the idea of applying that into our work, into the cultures that we create in organizations, because then actually you can realize that it's not whether an individual is brilliant at HR or an individual is brilliant at financial accountant. It's actually, are we creating the genius loci for that person, that situation to thrive? Then it gets a whole new way of looking at the way we manage talent and all that kind of stuff. It's actually around creating the conditions rather than supporting individuals.
Yes, absolutely. And it was interesting. I have a Facebook group, and I put, how important is environment to you on a question this week. And it is so important. If you're going into an environment where the energy level is sort of dump, you what are you getting? But if you go in and you've got this sort of freshness and this energy and this real vibe, because we are, aren't we? We're all energy. We're all actually atoms vibrating at a different speed to create the solid form that we see ourselves in. And so there's so much in the unseen. I mean, even just doing this Zoom interview now, how the heck does that work? And it's so much in the unseen that we don't see. And we don't see this, and we don't see invariably what energies are going if the environment is incorrect, and therefore it has that impact. And if you've got any negativity, how it can bring people down, and people might not even show it, but they're feeling it, and it can, it's a whole topic in itself.
How many organizations pay attention to any of that, really, when they're managing performance or all that kind of stuff? It's all based on individual, and there's never a kind of, another long word, reciprocity between organisation and individual. And it's that sweet spot where the organisation comes. And I think we all have probably been in a particular point in our career where that all comes together. The team, the role that you're doing, the particular work that you're doing at that time, and the way that the organisation is, the kind of bigger picture of the organisation, where it's at, where it all comes together. And I can think of a couple of times in my career where it's like, wow, you hit that sweet spot. I was never, I don't think, particularly better at my job at that point than at any other point. It was just everything else constellated perfectly around me to make me thrive, and I think ever since then I've kind of gone, how do I recreate that? And you kind of can't, because there's so many intangibles, but it's like we can start to look at what makes us tick, what makes our teams tick, and all that, and build it together.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I mean, as you say, that there are so many different energies that need to combine, so you get that sort of, real sort of high. But you can on a general level, I mean, it's not right. We've got yin and yang, we've got light and dark. You know, both need to exist, but actually, you know, you wouldn't, if you lived on that sort of high all the time, you wouldn't appreciate it. So, yeah. But it's getting that sort of middle ground. It's getting that balance, and something that I'm always in. You know, you don't want to be down here, but you want to recognise down there's down there, and you want to recognise and you want to aspire to that up there. You know, and it is putting those components in place, and as you say, looking at it and making it work. And how can we go about that? It's continuous improvement, isn't it? It's that continuously looking at how things can improve. I mean, if we go back, because it's quite interesting, I think, your career history. I mean, obviously you did an environmental sciences degree back in the day, didn't you? And that was post, in fact, shall we bring in the kingfisher story? Because I think that's rather lovely.
Any opportunity to bring in my kingfisher story. I consider my career to be a trail. It's like a long and widening trail. And I think they're the best kind. But so, I mean, I grew up in the Black Country, in Walsall in the Black Country, in the kind of post-industrial age, if you like, so the mid-1980s, and I was a 9-year-old boy. And like all 9-year-old boys in the mid-1980s and the 70s and all the time before, I was given the freedom to ride around on my bike, and I used to hang out on a canal bank, and it's not, you know, it was a kind of classic sort of mid-1980s Black Country canal bank with lots of shopping trolleys in it and all that kind of stuff. And I basically built myself a den, my own little private space where I used to hang out by myself.
Early man cave.
An early man cave. Yeah, I think 9-year-old boys need them almost as much as 44-year-old men need them. That's what I reckon. But so and then I just saw at the corner of my eye this flash of neon light that went across me. And it kind of blew my mind, and a few minutes later, there it was again. And it turns out it was this kingfisher. And it just, you know, against this sort of grey background, it just blew my mind. And it was from that moment, I saw that kingfisher for pretty much every day for the best part of the year, until one day the kingfisher didn't show up, which was kind of like my heartbreaking moment when I was 10. But that moment made me want to learn more about nature. I studied to be an environmental scientist off the back of that one kingfisher. So yeah, I've got a lot to thank that kingfisher for, even though I didn't stick around with environmental science.
Yeah.
Because when I was doing
went on a different trail altogether, didn't you?
Went on a different trail altogether, and yeah, and I think there's I guess two things. Firstly, when I did environmental science bit, I came to realise that I didn't like the science bit, which was one of those things I wish they'd told me at school. But you know, it was, yeah, that wasn't where my skills were. That wasn't the part of the kingfisher that I wanted to attach to. But there was also another thing. I don't know if anybody that was, I guess, around in the sort of mid-1980s in sort of post-industrial areas, there was a kind of, in me, a kind of restlessness, a kind of wanting to change things for the better. And I wasn't sure that I could do that with environmental science at the time, the way that the things was. And it was about that time that, so I grew up, my teenage years were spent where the M6 and the M5 meet. It's sort of by the RAC building. It's like, people know it, they've seen it. But my playground was literally underneath where there's two motorways meet. And I remember I was 21, I'd just come back from university, and Richard Branson stood up on a stage, and he basically said he wanted to grass over the M6. And of course, it was one of those big PR promises, but it was like, hang on, I wanted to do that all my life, you know, having played underneath it. The idea of grassing it over was really appealing. And I ended up getting a job at that point with Virgin Trains, and it was I found a place where I had the opportunity to kind of shake things up, to create change. And over 13, 15 years, I kind of made my way through Virgin Trains into various other Virgin companies, and somehow the environment and me worked well together. That sense of being in flow, being in my genius loci, if you like. And I ended up being the head of group brand strategy for the Virgin Group of companies. Wow. Which, yeah, it is like this wow. I still look back and I go, wow, as a kid from Warsaw, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like I was sitting by the canal a minute ago, and now I'm, you know, like we did some work with, you know, Archbishop Desmond Tutu in Cape Town, supporting his organisation and, you know, Virgin companies, and you know, it's like, whoa, that's slightly mind blowing. And but so I did that for 4 years, and then I just after the birth of my first child, kind of had that moment, which was like that moment of everybody knew me as Mark from Virgin, like literally everybody. Oh, that's Mark from Virgin, and it was like I'd completely lost my sense of self within my career, and I guess I'd lost connection with the kingfisher, you know, that whole sense of me. and I just felt like I needed something different. So I kind of made my exit from corporate world at that point, and I've kind of been sort of trying to make sense of it ever since then. But really kind of, because, and part of the thing is people say, well, which brand are you going to go and work with next? And it's like, once you've worked with the Virgin brands, I see lots of people who are brand, they love brand, they kind of like, they make them tick, they get really excited about brands. And for me, even though I was managing probably at that point the most powerful brand in the world, it wasn't the brand itself that excited me. It was its potential to create change. So actually, to go and work for, I don't know, a shampoo brand or a car brand or something didn't excite me. It doesn't like, I'm not into brand. I'm into change. But at that point, I knew that it was the rewilding that I needed, and so I did a course called The Call of the Wild, and retrained as a wilderness guide, and
oh wow,
so I kind of bring that into the mix now. And then since then, I've been doing a whole range of sort of projects, as well as my mentoring, coaching, and training and speaking around this subject of wildness. I also do what I term projects into wildness. So I brought together all of the big nature conservation organisations, and we created a thing called the Wild Network. And we made a film about rewilding childhood. I was a new dad at that point. It was this whole thing about how do we kind of keep children being their wild selves, rather than kind of force it out of them. And we made a film called Project Wild Thing, which was seen by 1.5 million people. And so I did that for a few years until, it was sort of, my time was done with that. And I've kind of moved on and now more focused into various other programs. So it's kind of been
quite a journey, Mark. Quite a journey.
Yeah, it has.
You've certainly done and seen some things and worked with some people, and I guess it's brand you now, isn't it? So it's working on you and the rewilding. And do you do, out of interest? I mean, I know we've spoken about sort of metaphorically bringing that out and working with organisations and things like that. But do you actually take people out? Do you actually do something that is wild? Do you go out into nature, back into that sort of environment where you are, as you said quite rightly, children they don't have that freedom that, we had. I mean, I'm somewhat older than yourself, but I remember building sites near where my parents still do live, actually, but this whole sort of road that is now and got a school at the end of it was a big building site, and you could get up there on your bikes. Health and safety would have absolute field day now, but you know what, we had a willow tree in the back garden. We'd climb up that. My dad's got scars on his legs where he fell out of a tree and cut his leg on barbed wire, and his mum said, "Oh, you'll be all right, son." Do you know what I mean? But we've taken that, we've dumbed our senses down, haven't we? And we need to rewild them. We really do need to reconnect. So going back to my question, do you take people actually outdoors as well, or is it very much sort of office based? So how, what do you do? How do people work with you, and how do they connect with you?
Yeah, well, so I think the main program I've got, which at the moment is, because I've not been able to recreate it in the virtual world, and it's a program called Fieldwork, and it is effectively working with organisations, and I do run it for individuals who come together, but for organisations where we literally go out into the field, and do field work, but it's around purpose, creativity, collaboration, culture, and so we kind of work on those things, but we do it outside because that's where we actually get the most inspiration from. That's where we feel our best and all those sorts of things. So that's where I do it. And, at some points with some organizations, it fits best if we go somewhere else, a kind of retreat style thing where we go somewhere a long way away. And sometimes actually it's about demonstrating that this stuff needs to happen where they are. And that actually, even if you're in the middle of, a big city, that we can get, it's back to my kingfisher on the canal bank. There is magic to be had. Even if we started just to create a culture of walking meetings where we sat and we did our one-to-one, sat on the canal bank where we watched the kingfishers going by, there is magic in that. So it's kind of like my fieldwork could be a long way away, but actually I find it as powerful, sometimes more powerful, if you demonstrate the potentiality of what's there right where we are, where our organisations are. So it's the field work is my kind of training, development, retreat style program, and then I've also got, it's called Fireside, which is my sort of coaching, mentoring program where I work one-to-one with people. And
again, basically working with corporate and individuals then, which is great. And how do they contact you, Mark?
So my website's best. It's marksears.co.uk.
That's nice and easy then.
I'm also on LinkedIn as well. So
yes, which is how we got introduced in the first instance.
It is the wonder of LinkedIn.
Brilliant, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with me. It's really it's really interesting, it's really inspiring, and it's great to know, you've gone from that sort of really sort of high-powered role, as you say, at the top of Virgin, and into doing what you're doing now, and enabling other people to sort of follow your path. And ironically, what dropped into my mind just then as we were talking was that I was listening to the Chris Evans breakfast show this morning, which is on Virgin, which is why it triggered. But, there's a book called Breathe that's just been released, and I can't remember the author's name. So, in fact, I might have it written down. No, I haven't. It's on a notepad in the kitchen. Because obviously I'm recording at home. We are in lockdown, sort of still. But it's about the power of breathing, and he's talking about setting up something national that's free for everybody to go and do, but it's on a sort of I think starting a week on Saturday, I don't know, 9 or 10 o'clock, and going to your local park. And he's starting it from some place in Marlows, which no doubt he'll end up with lots of people there, but social distancing, of course. But breathing through the nose, because people have lost the art of breathing through the nose. I mean, it's just crazy. Absolutely. I mean, something simple that we all do every day, and it's free.
Yeah,
but we've lost the art of.
We've lost the art of it, and I think for me, I talk quite a lot in my work about just trying to catch the little moments of awe and wonder, and some of these are slightly bigger than just noticing breathing, but is the most important. Like literally, it is in itself a miracle that we can fill these lungs up, and then, it's extraordinary. But even just slightly bigger than that, just going and watching the sunset, and just there's just the marvel of that. I always, where I can, and where we're staying overnight somewhere. In the spring, I always get groups to come out with me at 4 o'clock in the morning, because people love that. And they love the idea of it. When I introduce it, they're kind of like, "God, this is the worst thing you've ever said, Mark." But like to just sit in darkness and in complete silence, and then listen for the first bird to sing. And the dawn chorus has been continuously going around the earth since the age of dinosaurs. It's like this constant loop around the world. But to sit and listen to it in the spring, to wait for that first song, honestly, it blows people's minds. It's just the simplicity of, again, slightly more than just breathing, but just to start to take a bit more notice, can go such a long way in just improving our lives,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's the simplicity. It's all too easy being sold that we need this and we need that and we need the other. And you know what? That's not knocking having nice things, but it's getting a balance. It's understanding and appreciating and having gratitude for the simplicity of life. And, just looking out and enjoying the garden, the nature, getting out into nature, and, just being at one with it all. I could just sit on a beach and just look out to sea. Then I want to go in and do a bit of bodyboarding, but but it's just being there, and I'd have far more enjoyment out of that any day than going shopping for the next plasma screen TV. As it is, my TV's broken and I can't be bothered to fix it. So, I'd just do other things. But, it's great. You certainly created a fantastic life for yourself there, Mark.
And I think, I live down in the Dart Valley in Devon now, so I kind of have this dream. But I just wanted to pick up on your point from earlier about children, and because my daughter's 9 now, so when you were saying that, I was just thinking, God, I was 9, had the freedom to ride my bike, and this was in Warsaw in 1985. It's very different to a little village on the edge of Dartmoor in 2020, But my 9-year-old daughter, there's no way I would give her the same amount of freedom as I had, and I'm just, it makes me question, so what is the right level of freedom to be giving my daughter at this point in time? It's just, it's fascinating. It's like, how do we live on all these edges? And I find it now. I find myself spending far too much time on my screen, when really I know that what really serves me is to turn the internet off and go outdoors. So how do we all kind of have those practices in our lives that kind of just help us notice, help us breathe, help us kind of pay attention to just what we need to pay attention to?
I think it is paying attention, and that's exactly it. It's tuning in, paying attention, going, do you know what? No, enough. I need to go out. I need to go for a walk. I need to be in countryside. I need to switch the computer off. I need to retreat, because you're using nature as that metaphor, and as nature, it has its time of rest, doesn't it? It's not on the go flowering all the time. There is a cycle, and we're the same. We're part of that whole cycle, and we need to take note of that, and we do need to rest up and stop. I mean, yesterday I'll digress because but just so I say that we have obviously finished the main bulk of our interview. But you know, I was so tired, finished work, and because I've got my own business, I just stopped at 4:30 and I didn't get started again until about 9:30 this morning, as I was in a mad panic. But you know, we do need to. But I think what you're doing is great, Mark, and thank you so much for sharing your story with everybody. And I hope they're inspired. And if they want to get in touch, please do, as I say, head over to Mark's website, which is mark.sears.com, or just Mark Sears.
marksears.co.uk.
Sorry, marksears.co.uk. I'm putting dots where you don't need dots. Marksears.co.uk, or over to your LinkedIn profile, which is Mark Sears, obviously, so they can get in touch with you that way. Awesome. So yeah, thank you very much again for sharing that. It's been great to chat with you, and yeah, enjoy. I think you're having a week off next week, aren't you?
I'm going to practice what I preach.
Yes, all too easy not to.